Hey guys, here we go into an extrapolation of skills for the Indongo fight, and how I think they're going to play a part in the fight with Horn today. And I'm going to be doing a video later too about keys to victories for both fighters, and based on this film and how I think that the fight is going to go. And we're going to kind of talk about some of the skills, some of the flaws in the skills for Crawford. Even though this looks like a great style for the in and out style, in drawing his opponents in, I want to talk about some of the flaws, why they're good and why they're bad, um, and um, and how they're going to affect the fight with Horn. So let's go ahead and get into it right away. We can see, using some jabs right there. But as you can see here, now he's rocking back, and you can see him rock back, and kind of pull away a little bit from Indongo, right? And Indongo doesn't bite, so he controls the space right there, which is fine. But we can see that that's what his strategy is looking to draw his opponent in. And now he's waiting, and Indongo finally does commit to a shot, right? And Crawford uses the same technique, right? Rolls and slips away, and then bam, lands a great shot. And now I hate that they do this, right? It's one of those things that makes fights more exciting by constantly changing the angles. It's something that movies do. Like if you watch like old school 90s movies, the camera changes like every 8 seconds or something, or every 5 seconds, and it stops you from getting really connected, and it keeps it exciting. But they do that when people punch in boxing, because it creates like ambiguity, right? And then you're like, oh, what happened? Oh, it's really stupid. But you can see that he just cracks him with this great shot right here. And maybe it doesn't land super clean. Maybe it kind of hits him in the neck, but he lands the shot, pulls like a pull counter style of offense. My video's frozen. God damn it. Come on, guys. Anyway, one thing I want to talk about real quick is why this is effective for Crawford and why a lot of fighters aren't able to do it. And I just want to talk about this real quick. As the shot comes, look at Crawford transition his way to his back leg, and look at how he turns his hips right here. How his right hip turns into his left hip right here. And he's able to transition his weight so that all his weight is on his back leg, and then he's able to drive that back and transition his weight back into his left leg. Boom. And that's why he's able to pull away and transition, because he's not locking up. He's not using his muscles to do this. He's using proper body mechanics to transition into the weight easily so that he has a seamless flow into and out of the pull counter style. Anyway, he lands the shot. Great shot. Now, one of the problems with this is very similar to a trap-based offense. Once he's used it, all of a sudden, his opponent knows that it's coming, and that can be a problem. And then once his opponent knows that it's coming, he can start feinting and baiting the counters and take this opportunity away from you or mitigate its effectiveness. And we're going to kind of see some of that and how that affects him. But one thing I want to point out real quick, and we're going to come back to this, he hurt Indongo with that shot, right? But because he's been reactive, right, he has a reactive offense, Indongo is able to surprise him with this shot right here, right? See how Crawford starts following him. Even though Indongo's hurt, right, he caught him with a great shot, he doesn't know anything about Indongo's defense. He doesn't know anything about Indongo's strategy for fighting on the back foot or moving back or when he's getting pressured, because he hasn't been pressuring him. He's been using a reactive style defense, and he winds up getting caught with a shot right there. And that's one of the flaws with having a reactive style of offense. That's why you see fighters like Guillermo Rigondeaux, right? He was famously hyped up and all this stuff about him. And he got to be a reactive fighter his whole career. People would just walk into shots of his, just like this one with Crawford, and he would be very patient when he would press his attacks after these shots, and sometimes couldn't get the knockout. It would be really slow, but he understands, right, because that's always his style, that he has to be patient, right, as he looks for information from his opponent and doesn't walk into a shot like Crawford just did, right? However, Crawford is like 10 times the fighter that Rigondeaux is. And I talked about this a little bit. Someone in the comments said, how stupid that you say that Crawford is underrated when he's like pound for pound #1 in a lot of people's. The reason I say that is because how long did it take? Like, how long was Mayweather pound for pound #1? Like 10 years, right? But at what point in his career when he started calling himself the best ever, and then people started going, oh, wow, he is the best ever, you know? And like a lot of people who aren't like boxing aficionados, they have like a really high opinion of Mayweather. Mayweather, phenomenal fighter, one of the best of our generation, probably the best of his generation, easily. Um, but Crawford is a better fighter than Mayweather, 100%. He's twice the fighter that Mayweather is, and that's what I mean that he's underrated. Is that people they just don't understand how good he is, what kind of skills he possesses, the way that he can fight backwards, forwards. He has the control game. He understands how to control you, using feints, probes, doing all that stuff. He's a better fighter than Mayweather, 100%. And it's not because he can fight southpaw and orthodox. That has nothing to do with it. It's his fight IQ, his brain for boxing. Now, Mayweather has better game plans. 100% he has better game plans. There's like probably no better tactical mind in all of boxing. If it weren't for film study and being able to watch film, no fighter in history would be able to beat Mayweather. He's just, well, maybe also because of the fact that he watches film as well, but he's just so good at crafting a game plan, and finding a way to win, and that's something that Mayweather has, and being able to adjust his style as people figure him out from fight to fight. But anyway, off of that topic, getting into the next part, right? So we saw him have success with that like pull counter, that follow style as his opponent comes in. And again, this is also due to the fact that let's see, that Indongo, look at how he steps with this shot, right? He steps with his lead foot in order to land that right hand or that left hand, and that's why he gets caught. And that's what Crawford is looking for. He's waiting for him to walk in. Now, let's see the next scene right here. Another problem with the reactive style of offense, right, where he wants to bait his opponent in, is he gets feinted easy, right? See how that shot comes out, right? And then immediately Crawford turns away, expecting the next shot to come. And now when Ndongo flashes the lead hand, Crawford's not ready for it. He thinks it might be just a feint, and then he eats a shot right there. And now it's not a clean shot. Maybe it doesn't even land. Maybe his opponent blocks it, right? But Crawford is not, yeah, it doesn't look like it lands, but Crawford's not in position to land his own offense. So you can see how well the feint works right here, and keeping him from being successful with that reactive style, right? Exactly what we saw with Lomachenko versus Guillermo Rigondeaux, right? He was able to feint and control him with the probes and get him out of position and stop all the effectiveness of his counters, and not allow him to be effective with them at all. Now, the next scene that we want to talk about is 136 of the second round. Now, another problem with having a reactive style, right, is now he's trying to time Ndongo's feints and his probes, because the feints and probes were making his offense so much less effective because it was a reactive style of offense. Ndongo was able to use the feints and use the probes to keep him off balance and keep his mind working, trying to figure out when he could land a shot. Now here we have Crawford trying to time the feint, right, and make him pay for the feint and try to take that feint away from him. But Ndongo picks up on this as well and shoots his own overhand left shot, right? Again, the feinting being very effective. And this is one of the problems with having a reactive style with his opponent. Now, Ndongo wins, or Crawford still wins this exchange, right, by coming back with a way better shot. But another thing that I want to point out, right, is after he lands that shot, look at how Ndongo is able to push him off, right? This will be important for after. Just remember this, because I'm not going to come back to it in the film, but I do want you to remember how easy it is for him to control Crawford, right? Granted, it's not the most legal, pushing his opponent, right? And he doesn't have to be this aggressive with it. He could just lean into him with his weight a little bit, and it'll have a similar effectiveness. But it is one of the ways that you can mitigate your opponent being able to counter you, is control them after you punch. Now, the reason that that's important is because Horn is very good at this. Now we're going to move on to the next part. Now, one of the problems is Crawford staying on the line, right? Now again, reactive offense, right? He wants Indongo to take that step, throw that punch, and then he can follow him back, right? Now what happens when he stays on the line? He puts himself in danger of 2 punches. 1, 2, right? Now neither one of them land, right? But that's not the point, right? Boom, boom. The idea is that uh, Indongo knows that the counters are coming, right? So he throws his shot, and then when he comes back with his own shot, he starts moving his head off the line as well. Again, this is another thing that Jeff Horn is really good at, is throwing punches and his head transitioning with his hips, you know? So he gets his head off the line of his opponent, and it stops them from knowing exactly where they need to be to land those shots. And it winds up being very effective. And again, this is another way that Horn is going to be able to possibly mitigate the counters from Crawford. And Crawford's going to have to really spend a lot of time figuring out how to land those shots, the timing of them, and where Horn's head is going to be. So I expect there to be a lot of missed shots. Now he can always go to the body, right, which is how he wound up knocking Indongo out and hurting him both times he hurt him. Even though he knocked him down in the second round with the headshot, he hurt him with the body shot first. And that'll be something that I think is going to be much more effective for him because Horn does have good head movement and does control his opponents really well. But staying on the line right there, I don't think it's going to be is another one of the problems with having this reactive style defense or offense rather, and that being the main source of your offense, because of the fact that also Horn is very good in the scramble, I'll call it. After the initial engagement, just kind of throwing punches, he's very good at that. And we saw him against Gary Corcoran doing a very good job of missing his first few shots, moving off the line when Gary Corcoran's trying to counter, and then even just putting his head down and landing overhand rights. You know, that it didn't look like he had any business landing punches and was still able to be effective. Now, let's see. Now, right here, boom, he knocks Indongo down, right? And good job. He caught him with the body shot a few seconds ago. Now he lands the headshot, gets the knockdown. Now, one of the problems, and we talked about this a second ago, he has 45 seconds left in the second round. We're just going to kind of watch this, and I want you guys to pay attention to how Crawford looks to land his offense, right? First off, he feints low, right? Like he's going to go to the body, throws an overhand left, right? And Crawford he doesn't have a counter for it. He's not expecting it. So all he can do is block, right? He's not ready for that counter or to counter that shot. So Indongo is able to easily create some space while he's injured, right? While he's hurt. Now, same thing, right? He tries to counter it the next time, right? When he does it, right? Kind of lands like a little bit on the back of the head. That's not his fault, right? He's trying to land on the head, but Indongo's leaning forward. But what does Indongo do? He grabs him and controls him and stops him from landing those shots. But he's having a hard time finding out where his offense is while his opponent is hurt, because of the fact that he hasn't been leading in the fight. He doesn't have any information. So what does he have to do? He has to start looking for information and looking for opportunities to land punches by picking apart Indongo's defense. But it's in this end of the second round, and he hasn't done that in the first or the second round because of the fact that most of his offense has been reactive. So he doesn't have any of this information, so he has to start from scratch. And that's one of the problems with having an effective reactive defense, is that once your opponent is injured, you still have a very hard time landing shots. Now Crawford again, boom, getting kind of caught with the shot right here because he doesn't know what Indongo's defense is, right? He doesn't know how Indongo's going to react to each and every one of these shots, these probes, these punches. He doesn't know. And granted, it's not a solid shot, right? I think it lands in the chest, right? But a better fighter might be able to land it way better, right? And land it with a clean shot, like he did earlier when he hurt him, when Crawford was following him. But again, 45 seconds, and he's not able to land anything, right? He's got this, this wild swinging right hook, right? Not able to land it, gets controlled after, pushed off the line, right? And then almost walks into another shot, right? Good eyes, so he doesn't. But you can see that Crawford has kind of put himself into a corner because he doesn't know anything about Julius Indongo's defense because he hasn't been testing it. Now, let's see. The next clip, again. Whoops, where is it? Another one of the problems with having a reactive defense. And granted, it's not the greatest shot right here, but almost free shots to the body, right? Crawford's trunks are a little high, just like most fighters. Um, for that something that was popularized by Oscar De La Hoya. Thanks, Oscar, for ruining the sport. Um, but um, but um, because he's going to the body, he doesn't have the opportunity to counter like he might normally, right? When the headshots are coming. So this is another problem with the countering style, is that it's not as easy always to counter shots to the body. And granted, Ndongo does a good job of obscuring whether it's going to be a body shot or an overhand left. But again, it makes it very difficult for Crawford to counter him because of those instances. As you can see, the feinting works really well, right? Boom, and then going to the body. But again, another problem with having a reactive defense is after that shot to the body, Crawford isn't always going to be ready for the offense of Ndongo because of the feints and because of the probes. And the way that he's able to kind of keep him off of rhythm, right? And he gets kind of some free offense right here after this shot. Now, the next part is I want to talk a little bit about being controlled by his opponents, right? And there are very few examples by Ndongo. He's just not that, like, he's a good fighter, but he just doesn't know these skills. But here you see him shoot that 1-2, right? And what happens? He controls Crawford, right? It's holding, right? And I'm having an interesting conversation in one of my videos in the comment section with another fighter who talks about how you give more credence to a fighter that is able to do these tactics legally than illegally, right? But the idea is that it stops Crawford from being able to enact his game plan, right? And there are a lot of legal ways to do this, right? After he shoots this shot, right? Boom, right? He could just fold his elbow up, put some pressure on him, and then lean off and pivot and move off the line. But instead, he kind of grabs him, right? And this is something that, like, I agree with him about. I can't remember his name. WD, I think that was his initials. But like when I grade a fighter, if the tactics are legal, then I give them a high grade. If they're illegal, I don't give them credit for the skill at all, in spite of the fact that they understand that it's important to control their opponent. If they don't know how to do it in a legal manner, then they don't get credit for it. Because eventually the referee is going to go, oh, you're holding too much. Oh, you're doing this too much. And once they take that away from them, like we saw in the Brook fight, Brook wasn't allowed to clinch nearly at all against Errol Spence. He was kind of a sitting duck once they get on the inside. Part of my prediction for that fight was that Brook would control him on the inside and clinch, and that would mitigate a lot of Errol Spence's offense. But because of the officiating, the stuff that went, all the stuff that went on with the Sean Porter fight, clinch till victory, he wasn't allowed to, or even try to use clinching as a control tactic. Now, I don't grade Kell Brook on his ability to clinch and say, oh, he's a better fighter than he is because of it, but it's important to understand that that's going to be something that plays a part in the fight. Anyway, the next clip is right here. Whoops. Yeah, he throws this overhand shot, and then he starts getting countered, and then immediately grabs Crawford, right? He doesn't want Crawford to be able to continue to counter him, so he can, while he's hurt, so he can kind of mitigate his offense. Now, there are a few other times where he was getting countered, and Crawford rocked him with that shot, that boom, that left hook, kind of, on the inside, and then Ndongo's able to push him off the line, and that's another thing that he was able to do to control Crawford and kind of mitigate the effectiveness of the counters. Now, the reason that this is important is because Jeff Horn feints a lot. He does get predictable with his feints, but he feints a lot. And also, he uses his physicality very well. And I think that he's really good with his style of control, where he throws a right hand, and then he'll kind of move off the line, and he'll control you with his forearm and push off you, and use his weight a little bit. You know, there's nothing illegal about that. It's not dirty at all. Boxing is a physical sport. This is not rock'em sock'em robots where you just stand in front of your opponent and finesse your way to a victory, right? As long as you're not holding your opponent, being able to stop them from transitioning their weight is a beautiful fight tactic. And that's the idea that you want when you're controlling your opponent. Now, I do think there are, and I will talk a little bit more about this in my video with Keys to Victory. But this is going to be a very interesting fight, and I do think that there are a lot of things that Crawford is going to need to have some adjustments for during the course of this fight, or at the beginning of the fight even, to mitigate the effectiveness of the feinting and the probing, and to mitigate the effectiveness of the control from Jeff Horn. Anyway, if you guys are interested in that video, it'll be up in maybe a couple hours. Yeah, thanks guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you.